When The Birdcage opened in theaters on March 8, 1996, moviegoers packed the seats for weeks. A story about a gay nightclub owner, his theatrical partner, and a catastrophically awkward dinner with a conservative senator's family sounds like it should have collapsed under its own premise. Instead, it became a defining hit of the decade. Today, the film still holds up, and the story behind the camera turns out to be just as entertaining as anything on screen. These are 15 facts about this classic that most people have never heard. Robin Williams did not walk onto this project as Armand. Early planning placed him in the role of Albert, the flamboyant, emotionally volatile drag queen at the center of the story. Williams turned it down. He had just wrapped production on Mrs. Doubtfire in 1993. After spending months performing in prosthetics while perfecting female mannerisms, he wanted something quieter. Playing Armand, the steadier, more grounded half of the couple, gave him that breathing room, which meant Albert immediately opened up. That search began for someone who could match the intensity Williams would have brought. Steve Martin was actually the first name attached to play Armand. Producers envisioned outstanding on-screen chemistry between him and Williams, and Martin showed real interest. Scheduling conflicts ended that conversation before it could go anywhere serious. Martin walked away from the project, which sent casting back to square one. Ultimately, his exit cleared the path for what became one of the most celebrated pairings of the 1990s. The team-up between Williams and Nathan Lane formed a combination nobody fully predicted until the cameras rolled. The Birdcage was not an original concept. Director Mike Nichols and writer Elaine May were adapting La Cage aux Folles, a 1978 French-Italian blockbuster that had already become a cultural phenomenon abroad. That foreign sensation ran across 3 films and spawned a hugely successful stage production before Hollywood decided to bring the premise to American viewers. May transplanted the setting to Florida, sharpened the political satire, and modernized the dialogue. She also rebuilt the supporting roles from scratch. Still, the bones of the narrative came directly from that 1978 source material, which had itself been adapted from a 1973 French stage play. The famous collaboration carried its own history into the project. Mike Nichols and Elaine May had built one of the most celebrated entertainment partnerships during the 1950s and early 1960s, performing sharp, satirical, two-person sketches that earned them a reputation as the smartest act in the room. Working on this picture brought them back together as director and writer for the first time in over 3 decades. Their shared instincts shaped every scene. Pacing throughout the film reflects a working relationship that was already fluent before the first camera rolled, showcasing the kind of shorthand that only comes from years of performing together. Hank Azaria built Agador's Spartacus from the inside out. The chaotic houseboy needed a specific rhythm, excitable, devoted, and perpetually underqualified for the tasks assigned to him. Azaria found the accent by drawing on his own grandmother's speech patterns, blending them with physical humor he brought to the role despite primarily being known for his voice work. His portrayal landed somewhere between absurdist and deeply human, which is exactly why Agador became so quotable. Fans who had no idea where the voice came from were responding to something Azaria had carried with him for most of his life, and that personal source gave the portrayal its strange authenticity. Before Agador became the Guatemalan houseboy, viewers know from the final cut, his background looked quite different. British actor Adrian Lester was considered for the role during early development, when Agador was written as a black character. Producers eventually decided that having a black actor in that role raised complicated questions about race and domestic servitude in a contemporary setting. His nationality was reworked, the part went to Azaria, and the version of Agador that reached theaters carried a wholly different cultural identity than the one initially scripted. That revision changed not just the casting, but the whole humorous texture of the role. Mike Nichols had a problem on set that no director's monitor can solve. He kept laughing. During the filming of several scenes, his reaction to the acting became so disruptive that crew members developed an unusual workaround. Nichols would retreat under a soundproofed blanket between takes so his laughter would not bleed into the audio. For a director known for his disciplined, exact approach to scene construction, this was a peculiar accommodation. Lane and Williams later described it as one of the stranger sights on a shoot that already had no shortage of unusual moments. Requiring the blanket repeatedly suggests the acting exceeded even Nichols's high expectations. A scripted, then improvised approach defined how the camera captured the best moments. Nichols structured the filming so that every significant scene ran through the script as written first, giving the cast an anchored, rehearsed version. Next, Nichols removed those guardrails entirely for the second run. Williams, Lane, and the rest of the cast were free to improvise, redirect, and respond to each other without the script as a safety net. Several moments in the final cut came directly from those improvised takes, including physical gags and line readings that never appeared on paper. While the script provided the foundation, that unstructured second take was where the film found its true pulse. Box office returns landed in a range that made studio executives stop and take notice. Producing the feature cost roughly $31 million, yet it returned over $185 million worldwide by the end of its theatrical run. For a mainstream Hollywood release built around gay male leads, a subject studios had historically treated as commercially uncertain, these financial milestones carried weight well beyond the production itself. Setting a new standard, the film held the record for the largest opening weekend for a movie with gay protagonists for 13 years. Another movie finally broke that record in 2009, which demonstrates just how long it took the industry to attempt anything similar. Calista Flockhart appears in a supporting part that most viewers forget almost immediately. At the time of filming, she was an emerging actress without enough of a profile to register as significant casting. That shifted the following year when Ally McBeal launched on television in 1997, turning Flockhart into one of the most recognizable faces on American screens. Watching this movie now means catching her before all of that happened. Playing a daughter that offered no indication of what was coming gives those few scenes a strange kind of retrospective weight. While visual identity for the interiors was constructed on a soundstage in Los Angeles, the project relied heavily on on-location filming in Miami, matching every establishing shot that suggested South Beach, Miami, the pastel buildings, the strip's relentless energy, the waterfront setting. A large portion of the principal photography actually took place right there in Florida. Rather than building a version of South Beach in California, production designer Bo Welch designed the lavish interior sets from scratch on Los Angeles sound stages, letting the real Miami serve as the exterior. Nightclub interiors and the apartment above it were fabricated sets, though the exterior street scenes were filmed on location. Welch designed them to sustain the illusion across nearly 2 hours of screen time without a single visible gap in the geography. Gene Hackman, who played the fiercely conservative Senator Kevin Keeley, eagerly embraced the role as a welcomed opportunity to return to his comedy roots. Industry lore sometimes confuses his projects, while his daughter famously persuaded him to drop The Silence of the Lambs for being too dark. He took on this satirical role enthusiastically on his own. Hackman's instinct for playing rigid, controlled men made him a natural fit for someone totally unprepared for the world he walks into, and his acting kept the satirical stakes grounded. Without a credible target at the center, the humor loses its shape. Hackman provided exactly that anchor, which is why the dinner scenes work as well as they do. When Nathan Lane received the offer to play Albert, he had already committed to star in an upcoming Broadway revival. Taking the part meant navigating that conflict, but director Mike Nichols successfully convinced the theater producer to postpone the musical's production. Taking the part meant navigating that overlap under real scheduling pressure. Lane described the offer as a career-defining moment, and the performance he delivered justified that description. Albert required physical commitment, emotional range, and the kind of timing that stage training builds over years. His Broadway background turned out to be an asset rather than a complication, and the portrayal became the one most fans associate with the movie's lasting identity. Agador's inability to wear shoes was not simply a running joke. Azaria built it into his characterization as a physical signature. The subtle detail communicated something about Agador's relationship to the domestic space he inhabits, without ever explaining it directly. That famous line about shoes making him fall down became one of the most repeated quotes passed between fans who appreciated the internal logic hiding inside the absurdity. Physical humor at that level requires total commitment. Azaria found a way to make the gag land fresh every time. Nathan Lane's Golden Globe recognition. Nathan Lane's performance earned him a Golden Globe nomination for Best Actor in a Motion Picture Comedy or Musical at the 1997 ceremony, placing him in competition for one of the industry's most watched acting categories. That nomination acknowledged what people had already decided for themselves during the theatrical run. Everyone saw that his emotional center was the engine driving the narrative. Lane did not take the award home that year, but the recognition cemented his transition from stage performer to film star with undeniable mainstream appeal. The transition defined the next phase of his career. Today, The Birdcage holds its ground as a film that landed harder than almost anyone anticipated going in. A risky studio proposition, a cast assembled through a chain of dropped projects and last-minute decisions, and a story borrowed from a French success that nobody expected to translate into American popular culture at that scale. Every element should have been fragile. Instead, the final product became one of the clearest examples of what happens when skilled collaborators find each other at just the right moment and trust what they find there.